welcome to Tea Time. I'm Laura Walsh, and I'm here tonight with Steve Moss. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
Hi. Tonight we're going to be talking about inequality, economic inequality, and that whole discussion about, some people make more than others and why that happens. And so just sit back, and we have some interesting clips for you as well, but we're just going to start the chat.
It's been, the Obama administration has used this as their major issue lately. And part of it is, another part of it is the minimum wage, and people boycotting and demonstrating against fast food places, etc. But I think this whole thing about inequality is a way for them to distract attention from both the disaster that is Obamacare and also the less obvious but really real disaster that is our economy.
Exactly, and a lot of times we hear 6.7% unemployment, right? But that's not true.
It's not. It's
and
not
people
true.
know that, right?
It's not true. You know what's interesting? I haven't done it lately, but you can go out to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they have a database, and you can actually get the real numbers, the raw numbers in Excel, and I figured it out myself. I compared the Reagan years to the Obama years. Okay. And in the Reagan years, if Obama had the kind of growth in jobs that Reagan had, 9 million more people would be working today.
Exactly, and I think they keep taking, and people don't seem to understand that they keep low, the number of the unemployment number continues to go down because they remove the people from the right? I mean,
yes, they've always done that. It's not like this is totally new, although I don't trust them. I don't trust this, especially when on election, the month before election it drops 3 points, right? I mean, or 0.3%. But they've always not counted people who aren't trying anymore, and that has been a policy. But one of the things is that they're driving people away.
That's right.
And they're creating incentives not to work, which was the point about that Obamacare thing that came out from OMB. That the incentives, the incentives are for people not to work, and more people are going to decide not to work.
That's right.
And this inequality, the bulk of it is their own doing. First of all, you're never going to get away with.
But I think there aren't good jobs. So we need to be clear, right? I mean, the people who work in fast food, now those used to be kids' jobs, right? If you were in high school, you worked at a fast food place, or maybe you were in college on your break. That's not where adults who had families to raise worked. You just didn't work in a fast food, right? So the money that you made, which was minimum wage, was not a living wage. But now the people working in fast food joints are people who are raising families, right? And so, sick time. So, in a way, I understand the push for the minimum wage to be increased because it's like a minuscule amount of workers in America. It really doesn't impact the economy.
It doesn't, but it's a, I'm more for the free market. I'm not for the government coming in setting any kind of wage rates at all, because really what it does is it prices people out of the market. So people used to come in as trainees.
That's right.
They work for little or nothing, but they learn the trade. Right? And so now if you put minimum wages in, well, I can't afford to have that trainee anymore.
So I think that's the pushback. Exactly.
On principle, it's not.
Exactly. But you see that, so the economy is changing, and people who had full-time jobs with benefits are now working, in consultants, and taking projects, or they're working, with for a temp agency, 9 to 5 for a company, right? But they're not getting benefits. So we're watching the disintegration of wealth in America.
Yeah,
right?
And the thing is that as I mentioned, the Reagan years and the growth, and his counterpart, Margaret Thatcher in Britain, suffered, under the same type of criticisms. And we have a clip from Margaret Thatcher. If anybody wants to go to YouTube, you can see this clip of Margaret Thatcher. All you have to do is type in Margaret Thatcher and the poor, and you will come up with this clip. Let's take a look at this clip right now.
I give way to the honourable gentleman.
There is no doubt that the Prime Minister has in many ways achieved substantial success. There is one statistic that I understand is not, however, challengeable, and that is that over her 11 years, the gap between the richest 10% and the poorest 10% in this country has widened substantially.
That's right.
How can she say at the end of her chapter of British politics that she can justify many people in a constituency such as mine being relatively much poorer, much less well housed, and much less well provided than it was in 1979? Surely she accepts that is not a record that she or any Prime Minister can be proud of.
Mr. Speaker, all levels of income are better off than they were in 1979. But what the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That way you will never create the wealth for better social services as we have. And what a policy! Yes, he would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That is a Liberal policy. Yes, it came out, he didn't intend it to, but he did. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm extremely grateful. The Prime Minister is aware that I detest every single one of her domestic policies and have never hid that.
And I think that the honourable gentleman knows that I have the same contempt for his socialist policies as the people of East Europe who have experienced it have it for theirs. Have hit the right nail on the head when I pointed out that the logic of those policies are they'd rather have the poor poorer. Once they start to talk about the gap, they'd rather the gap were that. Down here. That. Not that. But that. So long as the gap is smaller, so long as the gap is smaller, they'd rather have the poor poorer. You do not create wealth and opportunity that way. You do not create a property-owning democracy that way.
Well, we're back. And isn't she something?
Oh, amazing.
Isn't she terrific? You can go out on YouTube. I love YouTube, partly because I do a lot of videos myself, mostly sports videos. But YouTube, I think it's, the type of stuff that you can get out there. Margaret Thatcher, there's another one, folks at home there, where she is discussing the pound and the euro. And she says, no, no, no. She just put her foot down.
Right.
And it's just so delightful. So
yeah, and this one was great. I think the big piece of the clip was the poor poorer.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, they want the poor poorer as long as the rich are less rich, and that it's gap, it's inequality, and that argument is made all through history. It's not like Obama made it up.
No, and I think that we're really talking about central planning.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And economies that are planned by government are no longer free, right? So what you have is, communism, socialism, fascism,
but
there's a...
They're no longer free, but they're also terribly, terribly inefficient. Because when you try and control things, For instance, there was a great, I forget where I read the story, but there was a story about the East Germans, and this was when they were communist, and how they handled their economy. And an American economist was saying, well, how do you control prices like you do? And he said, well, we just look over to Western countries and see what their prices are. And he says, really? Well, then, if you took over the world with socialism, how would you do prices then?
Right.
You know, and
right. Yeah. Who would be setting the market? Like,
yeah,
who
because prices are just information about the economy.
That's right.
That millions of little pieces put together, and that's what goes into a price.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a. But YouTube is just a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing.
It
There's
is.
plenty of clips out there for it with.
Absolutely, and that one was delightful. And I think we want to talk a bit about, we're talking about inequality and how managed economies we're undergoing this fundamental transformation. So we might as well be honest about it, right? So instead of unemployment at 6.7%, it's really 23% for white people and 39% for people of color, right? So and in teens, it's like 50%. So the numbers we're getting aren't correct, right? And then inflation is really 10%. Right?
Yeah. Well, they keep out food.
And
They've
fuel.
dropped out. I don't know why they didn't used to do that.
No, that's new.
I think it might be a way, like a way of reducing, because there's these cost of living adjustments.
I was just going to say for Social Security. So what they're doing is, so senior citizens who are on a fixed income, right, they count on their savings, like their annuities, earning interest, right, so that they can live. Well, if there's interest rates are zero, for the most part, right? They're artificially suppressed. And so you have seniors who were savers, and now they're not getting the interest from their annuities anymore. And their investments, they're not in stocks anymore at their age, 75, 80. So then they have a high cost of living, right? So they've got, and inflation is 10%. It is. So you have, people who are, elderly now thinking, well, the best bet I can have to survive is a reverse mortgage. Right? So there's this whole, and I think people need to have an honest discussion about the real numbers, don't you, Steve?
Yeah.
You need to look deeper than what you hear in the news.
Right.
You need to find this out for yourself.
I mean, I think people realize that the economy, I think in general, people do not think the economy is doing well.
Right.
The stock market has done well. Today it tanked, but over the period of Obama's administration, the stock market has practically doubled. Now, when it had crashed in 2008, 2009, and now it's come back. But that is part of, and then they go out and decry inequality.
Right.
When that was created by the pumping of QE 1, 2, 3, and infinity.
Right.
And that pumped up, that money seemed to, I don't understand how it does it, but it seems to find its way into the stock market and inflates prices there.
Exactly. So nothing we have is real. Right? I mean, you look at the stock market. In the stock market, it's used as a PR tool, I think, in many instances. If they can keep whatever it is, whether it's flash trading or pumping in QE, the quantitative easing money, or whatever it is, to keep the volume up and to keep it looking like it's prosperous, then people know their money's in 401ks, and they're like, okay, well, I'm not making it now, but it's in my 401k, and I'm making money there, so it's not so bad. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do think that they were genuinely trying to salvage something. I don't really question Bernanke's motives for it. I think it's probably the wrong policy. Yeah. But they think that they're doing the right thing. But I think it had an effect in the 2012 election, because the wealthy were better off than they were 4 years ago.
Of course.
They were better off.
Right.
And the poor were locked into government.
That's right.
Right? So he kind of got that portion of the population who, if the market had been worrying them they might have thought twice about voting for him again. But I really think that's what did it. That's what got it.
It could be, but I think, to the point is, I think we need to have this is personal opinion, we need to be honest about it. When someone says, oh, unemployment's not so bad. No, unemployment is 23%. We need to say those things out in public, right? It doesn't mean we march. You don't have to, go nuts. Yeah. But we need to have an honest conversation about the economy.
They're not serious about jobs.
Of course not.
Democrats today are asking Obama to give an answer on this Keystone Pipeline, and that's 11 Democratic senators who are coming out, because I'll bet you anything they're all running for re-election.
Yeah, they're just looking for a headline.
Because the fact that they're doing that is because jobs are so so lacking, and people are really suffering.
Well, and I think that when you get back to the inequality, there is great inequality in that our wealth is disappearing, right? And one of it is the trade imbalance. Right? So for every dollar that Americans produce in a product or service that's exported, we import $11 back.
Right, that's been that way
for a long time, but it's getting worse.
One of the dangers, and dollars are held overseas.
Right.
I mean, the dollar is the way people pay for everything. That means they hold those dollars. If the real disaster, and I don't know if it's ever coming or when it would come, but if people lose faith in the dollar.
Well, that's actually happening.
I think it is happening, but if they lose faith in the dollar and start, that would drive the price of dollars down, because people would be trying to get rid of them.
Right.
That would be very scary.
Well, didn't Timothy TurboTax Geithner talk about killing the dollar? And they have him on tape.
Really?
Yes, he's talking about killing the dollar.
Well, what was his rationale for that?
The idea is that, here's the philosophy behind the redistribution of wealth, and the whole idea is that America is too rich. Our time is ended. This is what they think. This is what they've come out and said.
He didn't come out and say that, did he?
Yeah, that it's really not fair for America to have the wealth. So that's why we have that trade imbalance.
You see, that's that same thing. That's that same thing with the inequality between the rich countries and the poor countries.
The same thing.
Now, we've got a clip from my other favorite YouTube is Milton Friedman. And Milton Friedman deals with exactly that point about the masses and poor people and what brings them out of poverty. So let's take a look at that clip right now.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
All right, so that was Milton Friedman, and I got yelled at by the producer. He was just in here yelling at me because it was Phil Donahue. Now, I'm assuming that everybody, you know who Phil Donahue is, right?
We have to update our cultural references, Steve.
Right. Well, but maybe, you know,
He's
but
married to Carlo Thomas.
Phil Donahue was the first Oprah.
Yes.
I mean, that Oprah's style, she modeled that right after him.
Exactly.
Right,
and Milton Friedman is very famous economist, right?
I'm assuming people know who
that,
Milton Friedman is.
but just in case.
But, you know, so if you go out to YouTube, there's tons of Milton Friedman clips, and they're all, some of them are quite long, you know, real lectures, and it's worth looking at.
Definitely. So in this clip, he was talking about, Phil Donahue was saying, well, there's so many poor people in the world, and the inequality is just wretched, and how can you defend, this? And Milton said, right, that capitalism and free markets have lifted up people who were impoverished throughout the world, and it's the only mechanism by which they've been able to get out of poverty.
And the answer is freedom.
That's right.
It's not attacking the wealthy. It's not attacking. North Korea is not poor because South Korea is wealthy. I mean, that's the best example.
Right, right.
But freedom is what, in economic freedom and political freedom, you know, they go hand in hand.
They do, and I think that people who are younger, who's surfing and find this, under the age of 20 or so, they probably have never experienced real capitalism, right? Because we don't have real capitalism. We don't have free markets. The price of milk is set, the price of wheat, the prices are set by the government, and that manages the food supply and the energy supply, but also with we'll talk about crony capitalism, right?
Crony capitalism. I mean, whenever these business people are going down to Washington, they're going for their own self-interest or the self-interest of their industry. And so I think crony capitalism has really given capitalism a bad name.
Oh, absolutely, because it's not it's who you know, right? And so they know all in Washington. Washington has been captured by big interests, big business. So you have, AT&T selling our data on all of our privacy, violating our Fourth Amendment rights. Google and Yahoo, those are huge corporations, and yet small IT companies that refuse to play ball, were shut down through regulations, right? We're seeing it in every single industry. Big food, automotive, right? So I think that people don't understand that real capitalism is not this.
Exactly.
Right?
They don't realize it's it is, freedom. It's free enterprise.
Right.
And, people really have trouble accepting freedom completely. Like free trade is free trade.
Right. Meaning if you screw up, you can lose everything. Right? Your company, all of your personal wealth,
but
the whole shebang.
It's the example of shouldn't we be protecting mom and pop's stores? And the Walmart comes in and mom and pop stores go out of business. Well, maybe we should pass a law to protect mom and pop stores. But the answer to that is, and I forget who gave me this, but is that only helps, that law only helps mom and pop.
Right.
Whereas the Walmart helps everybody because it gives cheaper products to the whole community. It's not just helping the mom and pop store.
It does, and there's a differentiation, right? So, if you go to a Walmart, you're not going to get special help. You're going to get a lot of, choice, right? And it's a large store. But if you want to go into an old-fashioned hardware store and you need a thingamajig and you don't know what a thingamajig is, right?
You have Home Depot.
Yes.
But I still have the Oakland Hardware,
right?
And these guys, it's amazing to me how they make money, because you go in there. I need a little nut this big, and he goes to his little drawer and he finds it.
But that's how they fight the Walmart and the Home Depot, because they've got a guy who knows about the thingamajig.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're walking up and down the aisles of the big box stores, and they don't help you.
You can't have government plan all this.
Right.
This develops. The guys that have the auto parts, they figure that out. You don't need government telling you, we need an auto parts store right there.
Exactly. And I think, when we look at that, like the cronies, Jeff Immelt was the head of the jobs team, remember? Who was offshoring GE's jobs on a regular basis, right? And so people see that, and that's what they see business as now, right? Because it's so corrupt.
Well,
right?
not only that, the GE. GE is a great company. GE makes great products. A lot of the imaging products are GE. A lot of the engines are GE, and they're a great multinational thing. And I'm sure they're following the law. But they paid zero taxes.
Right.
And didn't some of that zero taxes come from the support that he gave to Obama?
Exactly.
And certainly they're not going to be scrutinized by the IRS, I don't think.
Exactly. And you look at someone like a John Corzine, our former, governor here of the state of New Jersey and former U.S. senator. He was the CEO or CFO of MF Global. He stole $1.2 billion, or hypotheticated or suddenly disappeared.
$1.2 billion.
Right.
It disappeared.
Right. Of his customers' money.
I know. Now that is.
He was dialing for Obama, raising money.
I know, but that should have been investigated more.
Of course.
And process. Somebody. I've worked in the brokerage industry, and I think you have as well. But you have to protect the customer's assets.
Right.
There's all kinds of regulations around that. Now, how did this happen? I think they were scrambling to save themselves, and they were doing things that were illegal. Yeah. They tried to, we just use it temporarily, we'll put it back, and instead they
Exactly. So, we'd love to talk more about this when we get on we always lead some road to. We're done. We talk about corruption. Here we are down in Jersey. That happened. But this is a great show. Thank you so much for joining us. Take a look at Tea Time Online, which is www.njtpartycoalition.org. And thank you, Steve. It was really fun.
Thank you
very much. You really enjoyed it. It was a great show, and I hope you enjoyed those clips. And I know Steve.
Go to YouTube.
Yeah, go to YouTube, get those clips, and we'll be in,
There's plenty more.
Yeah, and learn about all the old hosts from 1980s. Yeah, so hopefully that will be something you'll really enjoy doing. So thank you very much.